Hi, and welcome to another podcast by Ian Wallace, the Messed Up Counsellor. Today, what I'd like to look at is something I use within the counselling service when I'm working with clients to understand how to kind of change things, how to see why things go wrong, and put in place some different process to enable a positive conclusion instead of a negative one. A lot of the things end up with being arguments and things that people kind of get into bad conversations with, and they'll use all sorts of ideas and processes to engage with that, as I've talked about in previous podcasts. And the process that I work with is to try and deconstruct that and try and make sense of why it's going wrong and what we can do to put in place some structures, some changes to make it go right. So arguments are really a point scoring process, but they're based on feelings and emotions and things that we don't really take notice of, to be fair. And so moving that down and kind of rearranging it and recreating it in a different way is obviously helpful. So I kind of use the idea of a clock face. If you can imagine a clock face, I usually ask them to draw this on paper and put the 12, 1, 2, 3 numbers in all the way around the clock face. And I asked them to think about something that would engage with usually a disagreement, some kind of situation scenario that results in people not really getting on or not understanding or creating some kind of confusion or some kind of negative process. One that I find constantly people use when doing this is loading the dishwasher. Because we usually get with relationships where opposites attract in some way, shape, or form. We get usually people that have a very defined understanding of the world. There's a black and white, there's a way to do things, a way to not do things. And then we get with somebody that's a bit more flexible, a bit more grey areas, a bit more not necessarily kind of having that structure, having that determined process. So usually the dishwasher is a good way of seeing this and to see why things don't work. So we'd use that at 12 o'clock. We'd put in and write on the piece of paper, fill in the dishwasher. Now I'd go to one of the two people in the room that we're trying to understand, and I'd say, okay, so how do you fill the dishwasher? Well, I fill it, all the plates are in a row, all the dishes are in a row, all the cups are in a row, all the cutlery in this container, that container. So a very detailed, very structural process, defined process. I say, okay, so what happens if when you're filling your dishwasher and you don't get it full, you come back to it later, and somebody's put the plates in the wrong way around or put the cups in a different place or some different structure to what you would have done? What happens then? Well, then I get very frustrated because that's happened. And why can't people see that there's a right way and a wrong way to do this? So we put that process, that explanation at number one. And the person who has loaded the dishwasher the second time and done it not necessarily as the first person thought it should be done, um, I would say to them in the room, say, okay, so how do you feel when you get this barrage of questions of why you've done this, why you've done that, why you've done the other, why can't you see this, why can't you see that, why can't you see the other? And they'll say, well, then I feel as though, what's the point? I'm trying to help, I'm trying to do something for them, and nothing's good enough kind of process. So how do you feel about that when that's happening? Well, I feel totally rejected, totally told off as I'm the problem. Okay, so then I go back to the other person. So when that happens and you're in that conversation and you're looking at that process, how does it feel when you get that reaction, you get that process of feeling uncomfortable, feeling not necessarily happy? well, then I feel, well, I'm just saying that this is not the right way to do things, and this is a way to do things, and I'll show you the book, and how the book says it should be things. So I feel as though I'm not listened to. I feel as though I'm not heard. I've not got a voice. Okay, so how do you react when you don't feel you've got a voice? Well, then I try and have a louder voice. I try and get my point across. I try and get heard. I become more contentious, more argumentative. Okay. So then I go back to the other person and say, okay, so when that's happening, well, I thought I might as well go away now. Might as well forget all about this. Don't know why I bothered in the first place. Feel totally rejected in that process. Okay. So when you do that, when you feel totally rejected, how do you react? Well, how I react is I kind of like close down, I shut off, I don't talk, I keep myself to myself. Okay. So when you're doing that, how does the other person feel? And we keep recording this at the stages on the clock face about the interaction reaction of the two people. It doesn't really matter what you use. It's usually best for them to use their own situation scenario, because obviously it's live for them being given one. And that deconstruction of the negative spiral, if you like, as we go around the clock face, we kind of see the deconstruction, how those things don't work, and what each person's interaction reaction is. So then I say, okay, so we go back to 12, we're loading the dishwasher again, and we go into position 1. So instead of that process of feeling as though nobody's done it properly, do you think it would be helpful to see that there are different ways to load the dishwasher? Does it really matter that people have loaded the dishwasher that way? Do you think that it's helpful to get into that argumentative process? Well, no, it isn't, because it results in us not talking to each other, not being connected. Right. So, what do you think you could do differently at that point? What do you think you could do differently engaging with this person at that point to see whether or not there's a different way of doing it? Well, I suppose I could just not talk to them about the loading of the dishwasher. I could leave it. I could just say, well, if it's dirty when it comes out, I'll just put it back in. Okay, so you could accept them. Yeah, I suppose so. So then I'll say to the other person, right, okay, so if that happened, if at that point there was an acceptance of you that, your way of doing it was different, but it was okay, it was respected and validated, how would you react? Well, I'd feel much more comfortable. I'd feel much more accepted, much more heard. I'd feel as though I had a voice and I had that respect and validation. Okay. So if you did that, if you felt you had the respect and validation, how do you think you react to that? Well, I'd probably be closer. I'd probably be more connected. I'd probably like this person here instead of not liking them. So then we go back to the person. Okay, so if you've got this different reaction, this kind of wanting to be around you, wanting me to connect to you, and wanting to like you, how do you think you would react? Well, I'd feel more comfortable. I'd feel more connected. I'd feel more loved. Right. So what do you think you would do if you felt that? Well, I'd probably want to engage more with this person and want to spend more time with them and want to be kind of connected to them in a different way. So we go around the clock face and we change each interactive process and see if we could work a different way. And we get it into a positive spiral instead of a negative spiral. And the people realize that actually at any point on that clock face, if we did something different in our interactive reactive process, we get a different end and a different conclusion, which is a much more win-win, positive, connected process. And then we can look at things and say, well, okay, is that a good thing? Is that what you would like? And they say, yes, of course, that's what I'd like. So that process means that we can engage with that and we can just understand and become more aware of our interactive reactive process and the fact that something doesn't work. And so we can change one or two items anywhere in that cycle and we can create a better outcome. And so when we create that better outcome, we can find a new way of being, a new way of interacting, more constructive, more productive. And that hopefully will be very similar to how any argument would be formulated between the two people, that interactive reactive process of rejection, isolation, withdrawal. Those are usually common features when people get into arguments. So we can use that example of the dishwasher to look at maybe any interactive reactive process that doesn't work, that creates arguments or creates distance between the two parties. So utilizing that process will help them to change not just the dishwasher, obviously, but anything that gets in the way of them having a connected relationship, which is always more helpful, obviously, for anybody to have that togetherness, the being a team instead of being two people in the same room. Hopefully that's made sense to you, and or for you, should I say? Sorry, and that you will be able to look at things in a bit of a different way and stop getting into those negative spirals and start producing some more positive ones. If you know anybody that might be helped by looking at any of these podcasts that I do, then please like and share and subscribe. And then you never know. People sometimes are in situation scenarios and they don't make themselves aware of that to other people. And it can be a lonely world sometimes. Just having a few different ways of dealing with things can sometimes make all the difference. My name's Ian Wallace. I'm the Messed Up Counsellor. Take care.